The mountains were silent, their jagged silhouettes cutting into the twilight sky. Winds moved through the ancient trees like whispers carrying forgotten stories. For centuries, travelers spoke of a hidden tomb carved into the heart of these peaks, a resting place guarded not by soldiers, but by legend itself. They called it the Dragon Tomb. No official map showed its location, no confirmed expedition recorded its discovery, but stories persisted. Tales of traps deadly enough to stop intruders and treasures untouched by time. Most dismissed it as folklore, until one group decided to find out. The Hunters of History. They weren't treasure thieves, at least in the traditional sense. They were explorers driven by curiosity, documenting relics before handing them to museums and research institutes. Their leader, Adrian Hale, specialized in ancient architecture and mechanical defenses. With him were Leaner, historian and linguist, Marcus, survival expert, Daniel, technical surveyor. Months of research led them to fragments of inscriptions referencing a serpent-like guardian spirit tied to burial rites. These texts suggested a tomb built to protect royal wealth and sacred relics. After triangulating geographic clues, the team began their ascent. Discovery of the entrance. The climb took days. Thin air and unstable rock slowed progress, but persistence paid off. Hidden behind moss-covered stone lay carved edges, unnatural shapes revealing human construction. Clearing debris exposed an archway etched with scaled patterns resembling dragon skin. Symbols lined the stone. Warnings, protection invocations, and declarations of eternal guardianship. Marcus exhaled slowly. This place wasn't meant to be entered. Adrian responded quietly. That's exactly why it matters. They prepared their gear and stepped inside. The first corridor. Darkness swallowed them instantly. Lights illuminated a narrow passage carved with astonishing precision. The air was dry and undisturbed, preserving dust that hadn't shifted for centuries. Soon they noticed something unusual, tiny holes embedded along the walls. Adrian raised his hand. Stop. He studied the floor patterns, spotting slight irregularities. Pressure triggers. Carefully testing their path, they navigated forward, avoiding mechanisms that might have released darts or collapsing stone. It became clear the tomb's builders engineered it to deter the unprepared. This wasn't mythology, it was design. The Chamber of Statues. Beyond the corridor stood a wide chamber guarded by towering dragon statues. Their stone eyes seemed alive in flickering light. In the center lay a mosaic depicting treasure offerings surrounded by flames and serpents, symbolic warnings about greed. Daniel scanned the floor. Hollow sections beneath certain tiles. Another trap. One wrong step could trigger collapse or projectiles. Working methodically, they charted a safe path. With each challenge overcome, tension grew. If outer chambers were this guarded, what lay deeper within? Signs of wealth. As they entered a secondary hall, scattered artifacts appeared. Decorative metalwork, ceremonial vessels, fragments of carved ornaments, evidence of riches, but also a message. These were distractions, test rewards for those who survived early defenses. The true treasure remained hidden. The sealed door. Finally, they reached a massive circular door carved with intertwined dragons. No handle, no hinges visible, only engraved instructions. Lena translated slowly. Balance opens the path. Force awakens ruin. Examining surrounding symbols, Adrian deduced a counterweight puzzle mechanism. After careful adjustments using movable stone rings, the door shifted open with ancient resonance echoing through the chamber. Beyond it lay darkness deeper than before, and the promise of the tomb's heart. To be continued. The team had survived traps, puzzles, and psychological warnings, but they were only halfway in. Deeper chambers awaited, greater risks, greater secrets, and, possibly, the treasure that gave the Dragon Tomb its legend.
The circular door closed behind them with a deep echo that lingered in the air. For a moment, no one spoke. The sound alone was enough to remind them how far they had traveled and how difficult retreat might be. Ahead stretched a passage unlike any they had seen so far. The stonework was smoother, more refined. Torchlight reflected faintly across surfaces polished by hands centuries gone. This was no longer the outer defense. They had entered the sacred interior, the Hall of Echoes. Their footsteps carried unnaturally far as they advanced. Carvings lined the walls, not warnings now, but stories. Dragons circling royal figures, offerings presented before ceremonial thrones, symbols of wealth intertwined with protection imagery. Lena translated fragments aloud. Guard the treasure, honor the ancestors, preserve legacy beyond time. This hall wasn't meant to frighten intruders, it was meant to glorify power. At its end stood a stone bridge crossing a shallow pit. Daniel's scanner detected movement mechanisms beneath its surface. Adrian tested cautiously. Loose stones shifted, sections designed to collapse under uneven weight. They redistributed gear and crossed slowly, each step deliberate, tension rising with every creak of ancient engineering. All reached the other side safely, but the message was clear. Even the final chambers demanded respect. The inner vault. A narrow doorway opened into the largest room yet. Their lights swept across it and stopped. Treasure. Not scattered randomly, but arranged with ritual precision. Gold vessels stacked carefully, decorative armor gleaming faintly, jewel-studded ornaments resting on raised platforms. The explorers stood silent. They had found it. Centuries of legend confirmed. Marcus whispered, "Unbelievable." But Adrian didn't move closer yet. Experience warned him wealth was rarely left unguarded. He examined the floor. Hairline seams traced subtle geometric shapes, another defensive system waiting to activate if disturbed improperly. Using long poles and mapping tools, they navigated between trigger zones until they reached the central dais, the Dragon Artifact. At the chamber's heart rested a single object elevated above all others, a dragon-shaped sculpture crafted from gold and inlaid stone. Unlike surrounding treasure, it showed minimal aging, suggesting ceremonial importance beyond monetary value. Lena studied accompanying inscriptions. This piece represents guardianship, authority, continuity. It wasn't simply decoration, it symbolized power, perhaps tied to leadership or ritual identity. Carefully documenting without triggering mechanisms, they recorded measurements, photographs, and scans. No item was removed. Their mission prioritized preservation over possession. The final discovery. While surveying the chamber's perimeter, Daniel noticed airflow where none should exist. Behind a carved panel lay a hidden alcove. Inside, scroll fragments, records, texts describing burial preparations, wealth cataloging, and symbolic trap placement meant to deter desecration. One passage stood out. The tomb wasn't built only to hide treasure. It was constructed to ensure legacy survived memory. The wealth honored rulers, the traps protected dignity, the structure preserved identity beyond death. This changed everything. The Dragon Tomb wasn't about greed. It was about remembrance.
Departure. Hours later, documentation complete, they began the journey back. Retracing steps through traps and corridors required the same precision as entry, perhaps more with fatigue setting in. But eventually, they emerged into daylight. Fresh air, open sky. The mountain stood silent again, guarding its secrets. Reflection. Back at camp, the team reviewed findings. They hadn't taken treasure, they hadn't claimed ownership, they had revealed history. The dragon tomb would soon become known to scholars, historians, and preservationists. Its traps studied, its symbols interpreted, its legacy respected. And Adrian understood something important. The greatest discovery wasn't gold, it was perspective. Ancient builders didn't design tombs merely to store wealth. They created monuments to memory, identity, and belief in permanence. And sometimes, the true treasure was understanding why something was hidden at all.